Houston, we have a problem.
Give me all you got!
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
Give me back my gun! I didn't kill my wife! I don't care!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Stand and Watch, the best and only dad movie podcast you're ever going to listen to, because we killed all the other ones. Hello to all you wonderful standees, and especially you, Steve Buscemi. As always, I am your host, Matt, and there is no Nick this week. Unfortunately, with the tariffs, he just became too expensive to have on, so he's gone. But we do have a guest. I am joined,
Hello.
there's no we, Nick is gone. I am joined by Sarah Manvel.
Yep, that's me. That's who I am. Hello, everyone. Not a dad, as you might be able to guess, but, I have dated a few in my time, if that counts, so.
Everybody, I'm not a dad, everybody can have dad energy. There's a little, one episode I said there's a little
That's
dad in
right.
everybody, but that doesn't sound right, so I gotta work on that, but.
It depends on where you're standing, I guess, so.
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself a little more? What do you do? What do you here? I'm sure you're here to promote something. Why else would you come on our little show?
Well, I am a freelance film critic, so I guess that's what I'm promoting. My name is Sarah Manvel. I am a film critic. I've worked for various websites over the years. I have Rotten Tomatoes approval, which is nice. And I'm very pleased to be on this podcast specifically because in my book, which is out of print, so I can't really promote that, but in that book, I do, in my second paragraph of it, talk about what a good director Doug Liman is. And so that sort of fits in really neatly with what we're going to be talking about today, doesn't it? So
Yes. So okay, I have to ask. You're Rotten Tomatoes approved.
yes.
Do you get to choose the little blurb?
For describing yourself, like, yes, you do. You write that yourself. Or I guess if you work for, big fancy papers, they write it for you. But I wrote my little blurb about me myself on there. Oh, you mean like the extracts
Yeah.
from the reviews?
Like when the review says like, oh, this person says it's rotten, this person says it's positive, and there's that little blurb. Do you choose that blurb, or do they just take a section of your review?
I think it depends. Because I think the page was built for me before I was approved by them, which was very exciting. And whoever created that page pulled the blurbs. The ones that I've uploaded myself, I pull the blurb. Yeah, I don't think there's a huge science to it. Why do you ask? Out of curiosity. So,
I don't know. It's just been something I've always wondered, like who chooses those blurbs? Because I know sometimes people say that like some reviews won't have a score, and people will be like, well, how come they said this was a mixed review, but they said it was rotten? So I'm like, so who chooses the blurbs in that situation?
I mean, sometimes when you are on the fence about a movie, it's very hard to kind of, you can sit there and go, it was okay, except, this one thing really irritated me, so that's what I'm going to highlight. But overall, you could say it's okay. But, if a movie is really good or really bad, like that part is super easy. When the movie's kind of in between, that's the part that you're sort of sitting there going, oh, how do I actually describe this in a way that is interesting? The review has to be interesting, and even if the movie isn't. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is a good segue to this movie.
I know, right? I haven't watched it in a while. It's such an odd one, isn't it? This movie. So.
I feel bad Nick's on here because he put this on our wheel. He was pulling for this movie to get picked. He was like, yeah,
this is his enthusiasm. So.
Yeah, he was like, it's one of those movies that like it's not great, but like it's decent enough, and like I kind of remember liking. And then he can't be here to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing with Jumper is that it is sort of like watching it now. Like, I mean, the first thing I gotta say that surprised me the most, because obviously I watched it again for this, that the special effects completely hold up. Did you think that, or?
It's not something I was really focusing on while watching this, but now that you bring it up, they do.
Right?
Like-
Because like I've watched like so many movies from around that time, and you're looking at the CGI and you're going, "Holy crap, like this looks awful now." Like when this came out, it was new, and so that's exciting, but you watch it now and you're going, "What are they doing? Like this just looks terrible." And at no point during Jumper did I think that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I watch movies that come out now and think that doesn't that those effects haven't aged, and
Yeah.
I
And
I I'm
yeah, right. It's embarrassing for
yeah,
everybody when that happens
and
even, so
look, we'll get into this. I had lots of problems with this movie, but I never once thought, well, that looks bad, which I don't know. That's both a compliment to this movie and I guess an insult to current movies.
well, I mean, because I think it's the other sort of interesting thing about Jumper is that it's maybe one of the last times, 'cause I watched the whole sort of the extra in the DVD about how they did all the special effects, in that it's still very human focused. You know, the CGI was sort of came second to doing a lot of the work in camera. So like for all of the fight sequences, they staged them so that they had basically the stunt people in play. So all they were kind of really doing is just sort of is kind of putting like the jumping together through the editing.
Hmm.
That it was so that it was done in camera. It wasn't done in the computer first, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can tell watching this. Everybody was in the same room.
Yeah, exactly. Or in some cases, in the same streets or in the same bridge or
Yeah,
the same, sand dune tumbling to their depth that in Dubai or Mexico or wherever it is,
yeah. Which
Yeah,
in these days you can't always make that claim. But before we really get into it, I'm going to introduce the
yeah.
movie fully. We are talking about, if you haven't guessed, because I mean you should. The title of the episode is the movie. We are talking about the 2008 film Jumper. It is a American science fiction action film loosely based on Stephen Gould's 1992 novel of the same name, directed by Doug Liman. The film stars Hayden Christensen in a rare non-Star Wars role as a young man capable of teleporting as he is pursued by a secret society intent on killing him.
Yes, it's very stressful when you sound it like that, right? And then the reality of it is like much more fun, isn't it? Like they tried really hard to make him not be a superhero, to
Yeah.
make him kind of be, a bit of a dick who can, walk through walls when he feels like it, right? So
It does kind of come from that, like, I don't know, there was a brief era in like the mid 2000s where they were doing like superheroes but not superheroes.
yeah, like Hancock and um or just like the kind of like the jokey time
Yeah.
travel movies that had a bit of a thing, didn't they? So yeah, this one, yeah, is definitely like he is definitely not someone who is using his powers for anything other than his own, selfish
Yeah.
desires. But that is what makes it interesting, right? Like if you could teleport anywhere in the world, like you probably would go like have breakfast in Paris and
Yeah.
then go surfing
I
in
I
Fiji if
I
you could,
I yeah, I do appreciate some of the things he did, but before we get into that, we always start off by reading some dad-approved letterbox reviews.
You
Nick is.
should go first.
I will go first.
Mine is go
Nick is not here, but he did send me his, so I will read off his as well. But I will go first. I have one here from somebody whose account name is just indie fuck, who has no profile picture, is not a pro or patron, so I don't know what you're doing. But they gave Jumper 2.5 stars and wrote, "I wish I could jumper myself into a better movie. Ha 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 ha. Nah, it's fine."
That's quite funny. I
Yeah,
mean, they're
yeah,
not wrong, are they? Like,
yeah. They're not wrong, and that's a I don't know, that's a. I read that and I was like, that's such a dad thing to say.
yes, that
Right.
seems fair.
I'm gonna pull up Nick's here. Do you want to read yours? Well, I.
Yeah, absolutely. So mine is by somebody named Lisa Alien Emoji. Like she literally has the emoji. And and she says they thought the cool concept and the suffocating sexual tension between Hayden Christensen and Jamie Bell would be enough to distract me from the fact that they forgot to write an interesting story or good dialogue, and they were wrong. And I just thought, huh, we need to think about that for the dads. Sometimes, how the friendships kind of work, like I mean, I'm not sure I would call it suffocating the tension, but there is something there, right?
I mean, there's definitely more between them than him and Rachel Bilson.
I know, right? Like it's surprising how vacant that kind of love story between the two of them is.
Um,
And right?
Yeah. It's of that era. We'll get into it, but Nick's dad approved letterbox review comes from Jake, who is a patron. Good for you, Jake. He gave Jumper a 1.5-star rating and wrote ... At least it needle dropped the hives in the tragically hip, which
That is
is
very
not wrong.
of the time, isn't it?
Not wrong. That's a great segue into our little, what we do here is we do the criticism sandwich because old dads love sandwiches. Nice little bun of likes, little patty of dislikes, and with some likes. And I'm just gonna, literally one of my likes for this is just, there's a tragically hip needle drop, and as a Canadian, I appreciate that.
That's fair. I am not sure I recognize the tragically hip needle drop, for which I apologize.
It's fine.
I have a couple of their albums, but yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I'm not enough of a fan.
Look, I'm not saying there's not a lot of good things I can say about this movie, but I will say that I appreciate their musical choice.
I think that's fair. The music needs to support but not overwhelm, and a lot of movies get that wrong, don't they? They sort of way overdo the
Yeah,
emotion notion, right?
the
As Quincy Jones
the
called it.
Zack Snyder style needle drops of just that. I like this song. Let's throw it in there.
Yeah, that can get old pretty fast, right?
Yeah. But I will start off with my real first like, and we talked about this a little bit before, but I really like how like the first thing he does when he learns he can teleport is he robs a bank.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, because who wouldn't, right? Like a lot of these movies, they'll discover they have a power and they'll do some stuff. You're like, why would you do that? Or like they'll go training. They're like, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, no, go rob a bank, and that's what he does. Like
Yeah.
that's what a teenager would do.
And I think in that sense, like if you did suddenly get like the superpower, I don't think you are going to suddenly become Spider-Man like right away. You're first going to do the stupid selfish thing. And in this circumstance, when David is sort of on his own, like what else? It's true. Like what else is he going to do? Like a 15-year-old kid who's got almost no money, like, how else is he supposed to survive if he doesn't commit some crime?
Yeah.
So it's yeah.
It's
You
it's
get
an
it. Like,
it's
it
an
makes sense.
interesting choice that like not a lot of other these types of movies, and again there was a lot of types of these movies in those days, and not a lot of them would make that choice. And it's just an interesting little character quirk. It's just like he's gonna rob a bank. He's gonna become rich as a bank robber, and he's just living large.
I mean, I think Doug Liman. Like, have you seen American Made?
I have.
Right? I mean, 'cause
Yeah.
I was going. This feels almost like on a continuum between Burn Identity and this and American Made, and just the sort of the bad behavior kind of and the sort of overwhelming kind of consequences of that. In a circumstance where it's kind of like, well, yeah, this probably is what I would do if this was all I could do. And I like how he kind of really leans into that, that they're not bad people. Like he's not a bad guy just because he's been robbing these banks. Like that somehow really comes through, which is like a very unusual thing that he can do with that kind of tone, right? Like I don't quite know how he so consistently does that. Do you know? What do you think?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Look, look, the villains in this don't really have any motivation at all beyond, well, you're bad people because you can teleport. But like, I do like it's like, well, yeah, I robbed some banks, but I'm not a bad person. I'm not gonna murder anybody. He's just living his life as you would if you could teleport, right? Like you teleport, you rob some banks, victimless crime. Pretty much, and then you just retire, and you just live in your penthouse suite, like he's just chilling.
Yeah, and then you fancy going to an Irish bar in central London. Why not, right?
Yeah, like he's not doing anything outrageous. He's like, yeah, if I could do that, that's probably what I would do. I'd go eat lunch at the top of the Sphinx.
Yeah, it must be lovely up there, right?
Yeah,
nice and secluded. You can tell this was made in the days before CCTV was everywhere, right? Because nowadays you would have to teleport a lot more subtly, right? You can't just sort of materialize on Big Ben without there being some drama. But yeah, if you could, absolutely you would sneak up in there, wouldn't you? So sneak around in the Coliseum, have a good look at it, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it's a nice little character quirk of just be like, yeah, like of course he would do that thing. Why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that, it sort of gets, I think, the appeal of this kind of teleportation, right? The fact that you can travel without having to sort of do all the boring parts of traveling, it's waiting in line at the airport and being at the airport and, and then, going on planes, which is so much quicker than, previously when you'd have to get on a boat and sail for 3 weeks and, or, go over ground. And it's, that it, it gets you, it gives you that kind of immediate gratification for being able to see and do all the things that you dream about. And that, I think, is something that is a pretty universal dream, right? That you don't always want to be stuck at home. You don't always want to be, I guess, in Ann Arbor, Michigan,
Yeah.
where I have never been, but this movie doesn't make it seem like fun. But
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I've never been there either. Frankly I've never heard of it until now. But it's one of those things where like who wouldn't just like it's kind of that universal thing of you want to get out of your little hometown and being able to just I can just teleport to Rome and to London and to
yeah.
of
I mean,
course I
it's
can just
not that
teleport
little
inside
a
a
town.
bank.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, let's do it.
yeah,
And he's not, and I guess, I mean, the logic of then Samuel L. Jackson is, well, I guess if you can teleport inside a bank, I guess you could teleport inside, the, prime minister's bedroom, or, you could kill the president. And, and I mean, they had that whole sequence in the X-Men, whichever X-Men it was, with Alan Cumming doing that
two.
really cool
Yeah,
Nightcrawler sequence, right? Yeah. But that isn't this. This is just, a kid who's sort of looking out for number one. And and it's true, he's sort of like, well, I guess I could do that, but why would I? Like, I don't want to.
yeah,
you know
right.
Eh,
Because he even said like I'm not
yeah,
I'm not going to do those things. Like why would he? He's got his money. Who cares?
yeah, exactly. And but it's in the sense of like, but I mean, if there I mean there's no movie, is there, if there isn't, people chasing him. Like, if he's just kind of bopping around, you know sulking over his, teenage girlfriend, and, like, getting to sort of live this kind of perfect hedonistic global life, it's, that's not particularly interesting.
Yeah,
I
obviously,
don't know if you could watch that movie
I
for too long without,
no,
throwing your shoes at the TV, right?
no. I mean, like, and look, Sam Jackson's good in this. I'll get into like my problems with him, like more when we get into
Oh
our
yeah,
our dislikes. But like, I think just the simple fact of like, okay, like he's like Hayden Christensen's just like, no, like I just jump around like to go to a pub and I'm rich now. Who cares? And Sam Jackson's like, well,
yeah.
you people can do this, so like you're dangerous. You could like, yeah, like you could kill the president. And
It must be stopped. Yeah.
yeah, like that simple thread is good. I think they overcomplicate it to high hell, but I will.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. But I think, but I guess that's also like, there's no other real reason for Griffin to make friends with David if they don't have this kind of complicated situation, right? Like, because Griffin seems to be having sort of a fine time by himself, going around, with his crazy hair, scowling at people in bars and then occasionally committing murder.
yeah,
And so if their sort of situation does, if they don't come together through, the suffocating tension or not, like, how else is there a plot here? 'Cause I think, I mean, because that is probably, well, that, that's we'll get into that with the dislikes, right? But I think what sells that is Jamie Bell. Like, it's very hard to think of somebody else playing that part, in my opinion.
yeah. And he's one of my other likes, and I just wrote in my notes here, cool
Yeah.
Tom Holland.
Oh,
Um,
really? Oh,
because
I mean,
look,
I
they
mean,
they
that's
look
fair. Like,
exactly
oh, sorry.
alike. Okay, that's one thing. And I'm watching this movie, and I'm thinking to myself, is Tom Holland always just trying to be Jamie Bell in this movie? Because it seems like I don't know. There's something
Yes, I think
right?
so. Yeah.
Like I'm like, okay, like I know they look alike. I know this for a fact. But I'm looking at his performance like, okay, he's kind of doing the Tom Holland thing before Tom Holland.
Well, no, I mean, because I mean, he got his start. He was the original Billy Elliot in the West End. Or, like, actually, no, Billy Elliot. Tom Holland was one of the Billy Elliots when it came to the West End. Jamie Bell was the original one in the movie. So he kind of has followed, like, literally in the footsteps. So,
Yeah.
and I don't think anyone, like, because when you do that kind of transition from being sort of a kid actor into adult acting, like, I think Jamie Bell has done it extremely successfully, and I think, in a way that maybe surprised everybody in that he's this, a solid actor. He has this incredibly charismatic screen presence. And, and he has always kind of done interesting movies, like he's always made some kind of fairly, you know, brave choices. Like he hasn't gotten weird, but he hasn't, like, I don't think he's been super predictable either.
Hmm.
And people just like love him. Like I was at a talk that he attended for the day, like the premiere of All of Us Strangers a couple of years ago, with him and Andrew Scott. So like the charisma in that room was incredible. But the female compere kept calling Jamie Bell dad, and I was sitting there going, "Sorry, you what?" know, like, do we all love him this much? Like, we're calling Jamie Bell. We're going, I wish you were my dad. And it was just like, oh man, like it was really, like it was weird, but I get it, right? Like you kind of
Yeah,
get it.
and I've seen him I haven't seen him in a ton of things, but like I've seen him in things, but like he's just in this movie, he's very charming, he's very charismatic. Like again, like I know it's weird to say because this movie came out when Tom Holland was like a fetus, but like he was very, he gave me like, oh, this is, I don't know, he gave me like that Tom Holland charming Peter Parker vibes of his performance. Like some of his, he's got some little like sarcastic line deliveries in there that are like fun. And I don't, this movie could have been him and Hayden Christensen the whole time, and I think it would have been at least 50% better.
Yes, I mean, then I think the arguments of the suffocating sexual tension would have probably been a bit more blatant than 2008 would be prepared to handle. But, you know, like, yeah, like, this to watch the two of them kind of pair up and fight crime, would have, or not fight crime, commit crimes,
Yeah.
would have, yeah, I think it would have worked, right?
Yeah, well,
So,
like when they're in their little, their little, I'll call them little, their buddy cop sequences. Like it's fun.
yeah.
Like that's when the movie's the most fun. When he's like, when he steals that car and he's driving
Yeah.
around, and
When he
Hayden
goes, it's a
Christensen's just,
lair. It's not,
yeah, yeah. It's my lair. Like when they're milling
yeah.
about, and like Hayden Christensen's so serious, and like Jamie Bell's just being a little scamp. Like that's when this movie is the
Yeah.
most fun.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like the intro scene of them in the Coliseum where he's being, rude and sarcastic, and Hayden is kind of having to, David's having to stand around kind of picking his nose in shock, going, "Oh my God, like what's happening?" It's yeah, like you really sort of follow him anywhere, I think, after that. Like it just boom. Like it's a terrific introduction.
Yeah.
So
Um, Before we get into our dislikes, of which I have many, is there anything else you really like about this?
I mean, I said about the special effects holding up, and I think how they sort of played with like the physics of the things, and how they sort of made it that that this was kind of fun and that there were clearly consequences, but that like when he goes into the lair and he's clearly been underwater and all that water comes in with him, just like that very sort of subtle stuff. Like I think that has more feeling to it than a lot of other stuff could have been,
Mm-hmm.
and 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 especially because it's like seeing Twisters last year, where all of the the drama is happening, and there's no, and then there's the Twister stops and everybody kind of stands around and goes, I'm fine, and then you go on to the next thing, even though the bodies have piled up and all this, and I was sitting there going, like, in Twisters, going, like, this is really terrifying, this idea that you can have all these 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 terrible things happening and there's no consequences. And Jumper, at least, never does that. Like it's not a big thing, but you can feel it. Like there's a snap to it that
Yeah.
David's lifestyle cannot continue even without the Paladins or Jamie Bell. Like they're like something will bite, and it bites more obviously with Griffin, and certainly with whoever recommended that haircut to Samuel L. Jackson. So you know they did talk about Drew Hill on the commentary, for Cisco, which is I that might be slightly before your time, but that is the hair, and you just sort of think, bloody hell. So maybe I like the hair because it's so silly, that he looks like Chris Tucker in the Fifth Element. I don't know.
Look, what I'll say about the hair is that it gave him a little more personality.
Well, yes,
It's
that's true.
very
I mean,
distinct.
otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, yeah, he's just some guy with a thingy. the electrical wand and that scary knife he keeps in that really dirty cloth. Like,
Yeah.
come on, like wash your knife cloth. You know.
Well, we're already talking about them, so I'm just gonna start off with my dislikes, and honestly,
Yeah.
most of my dislikes do come down to kind of the same thing, and I'm just gonna like, and it really starts off here because 8 years go by, and Sam Jackson just gets a phone call saying we got a lead on the bank job, and he immediately finds Hayden Christensen, and
I mean, I guess right. Like in that sense, this is the only crime that has ever been committed. Ever.
yeah, I don't know, I'm just like right away, I'm like, okay, so it's gonna be that kind of movie where things just happen.
Yeah. And before we go into, we need to pause right here and say one other good thing about this movie is Max Theriot, young David. He's amazing. Like he brings. Did you not think so?
You
Like,
know, I thought the whole high school prologue was really well done. I think a lot of times you get a sequence like that, and it kind of makes or breaks the movie because if those young actors don't really set it up well, like
yeah,
you're boned, and they set it up very well. And again, like it's a criticism sandwich, so we're gonna end with more likes, so we can get into that a little later. But
okay,
yeah, like that whole the prologue was great, and this is a movie where I know it by its reputation, and the prologue started. I'm like, maybe this will be better than I thought. And then Sam Jackson
yeah.
gets that phone call, and immediately it cuts to he's in his apartment, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were talking a lot because I also listened to like the director and the producer commentary track on the DVD, and they were talking a lot about how for teleportation, like you get to skip the boring parts of life. Like you don't have to wait in line, you don't have to sit on a plane. Like you can just go to all the good stuff all the time.
Hmm.
And they clearly use that for the script as well. They
Yeah,
skip out the scenes that might show, I don't know, David and Millie like actually having a relationship, but
and
they
it
deliberately
it's
chose to take that and just put them straight to Rome, right?
it's so weird too in a movie where like kind of the main through line is like there are consequences to your actions, and you never it kind of always just skips the part. Like it skips
Yeah,
right to the consequences. You're just like, oh, 8 years go by. We have a lead on the bank job. He's there immediately. Like you don't see
yeah,
anything. There's no chase. It's just like he's right there. And I think that kind of like let's just jump ahead extends to the whole like their whole secret organization, because I'm just like, okay, why do they want to kill all the jumpers? Like, where do they get their funding? Where did they get those wonderful toys? Who's in charge? Why is it seemingly only employing American agents when the jumpers are seemingly a worldwide problem? Like, like
I mean,
who is in
the
charge?
backstory, the
Is
backstory of the
yeah,
evil,
yeah, like who's in charge? Is Sam Jackson in charge? Does Sam Jackson have a boss? Like, I don't know what's going on. And you can't just throw in like, oh, there's a secret ancient war between the jumpers and this other organization, and just that's it.
Paladin.
Right?
Well,
You just can't tell me that there's an ancient war between these two factions and then not tell me why.
I mean, I'm not going to defend this too hard because it's true, but I think the idea that this kind of goes back. Someone is like paladins makes me think of like Knights Templar and the Crusade and all this kind of stuff. So the idea that having powers that are godlike is an abomination and therefore must be destroyed. It probably veers a little too like religious to be fun, and it probably, it would sort of bring the movie to a screeching halt if they sort of explained, the financial, superstructure of the Paladin, organization.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm
Because
not saying like
yeah,
give me, I'm not saying like give me a 20-minute like backstory on this. Just give me, but what I'm saying is like just give me something, because like it's kind of just like
yeah,
it's kind of like a big thing to just throw in there and say this is it.
that's true. What I feel like they should have explained, and they really didn't, is how come Diane Lane ended up with Michael Rooker. Because just based on their houses, Diane Lane is clearly a sophisticated lady with like great tastes. And Michael Rooker is playing the Michael Rooker part of the guy who drinks beer in his undershirt and, screams at his kid. And, you know, what brought them together? Why did they have this child in the first place? What was
Yeah,
nice Mary the Paladin lady doing in Ann Arbor, Michigan? Was she a
yeah.
grad student? Like,
It's
what
just,
happened?
I think that's, ultimately I think that's what brings this movie down, is this is just there's a lot of things that are just in there, and for seemingly just like, what, but why? And like, I don't even dislike the idea of there's an ancient war between the Jumpers and the Paladins. But like, if you're gonna
Yeah.
do it, like, do it, right? Don't just like throw it in there. And especially like in a movie where, again, like the main through line is, actions have consequences. Like, tell me why this group is enacting the consequences. Don't just like,
No, that's true.
and like, I know that I do believe there's like a throwaway line Sam Jackson says about how like only God should have that power. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, but like, so what is this organization? Is it ancient? Is it religious? Do they, or are they just like, do they just think that the Jumpers are inherently bad because they have godlike powers? I don't know what his motivation is besides being like, well, he's got these powers and that's bad.
They're probably like the sibling like organization to the one that's in the Da Vinci Code, chasing Tom Hanks all over the place. Although
Yeah.
admittedly I haven't seen that movie in a while. But it's that same kind of, thing. Or, like Michael Sheen in the Twilight movies, just kind of there to be sort of with an interesting hairstyle and to be sort of scary. And then maybe, threaten the lives of our charming heroines or heroes, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, and again, like Sam Jackson is good in this, because Sam Jackson's always good.
Yeah.
He's clearly having
Yeah.
fun, and
Yes.
and again, like the whole, and we keep saying this, like the whole, his act, Hayden Christensen, his actions have consequences, and Sam Jackson is those consequences. Like, that's all good, but you can't just
Yes.
you can't just leave it at, well, you just can't leave it there. Like, oh, his actions have consequences, and the consequences are the villain who wants to kill him because.
I think what is it could have worked if perhaps they had swapped the parts that Jamie Bell and Hayden Christensen were playing. I mean, Hayden Christensen being the big star in the context of this movie, like that would not have worked. But I think his sort of kind of creepy charisma would have been much better at Griffin, and sort of the kind of scruffy charm that Jamie Bell has might have worked better for David, even though that casting would never have gotten the movie off. But I think Hayden, he seems like fine in real life, but just like there's something about him, like as an actor, that is so tense and so kind of like it doesn't feel like there's a lot there, which I don't think is particularly fair to him. But
Hmm.
it gives him less like charm than almost any other leading man I can kind of think of. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I think Hayden Christensen is, despite what some people say, I think he's very good as Anakin. I think what he does works well for that role. I think to an
That one role.
I think to an extent it kind of works for this role too, but not to
Mm,
lead the whole thing by himself. And it's like we said earlier, like the most fun parts of this movie are when he's with Jamie Bell.
yeah.
And I think one of my other dislikes is that him and Bilson do not have chemistry. And I think that romance subplot just doesn't really do anything. And I think if you cut that and just make it Jamie Bell and him,
Yeah.
then
It
you
would have
have
been much more
something.
interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think, Millie is so underwritten. Like she doesn't actually get to do very much. Like, and certainly Millie as an adult is really only sort of reacting to David. Like, she doesn't get to, other than go, "Oh my God, I'm in Rome." Like she doesn't actually get anything
Yeah.
to sort of say. And
She's the girl he likes. Like, that's all we
yeah,
ever
that's it.
learn about her.
Exactly. And I don't think in the sort of, the kind of high school introduction, like it like whatever that isn't like we get it from his side, but we don't get necessarily get it from hers.
Yeah.
And even with the idea that she's always dreamed of traveling, like it's a leap. And it's not, I don't think it's, I think Rachel Bilson did as much as anybody could do with a part that is this
Yeah.
underwritten.
I have no problem with her. It's just the character and the pairing just doesn't work, and I just every time like they're the main crux of a scene. I'm like, just bring back Jamie Bell.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and it's a shame, right? Because this was, I think, her first big movie after the OC, which was, like that show was huge and she was so wonderful on it. But this movie did not set her up for the career of kind of Hollywood stardom that I think everyone was thinking she was capable of doing. And that was a big shame. So,
Yeah, and yeah, like she's fine, right? She has like
yeah.
she's doing the most you can do with that kind of role. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like the prologue sets it up like, okay, she's the girl he likes, but you know, I we never really learn why he likes her or what their relationship is,
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
never even it's never expanded on beyond that. Like when he goes back, and they meet up again as adults, you think to yourself, well, this is where it expands, and it's just no, she's still just the girl he likes, and she's just
Yeah.
there.
I mean, this is sometimes uh, when men are writing women, sometimes men forget that that's not enough. you know, that a woman has to, you can't just kind of like admire her from afar, like she has to have that sort of like human personality and that, and then that, that's why you like her, whether it's for, her brain or her body or her whatever, and they just so they got the sort of he likes her from afar part of it and then forgot that that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I think,
Like she's next
yeah.
to him the whole time, and you never get a sense that he's not just admiring her from afar. Like I don't even know if he knows anything about her.
I mean, because that's the whole thing. Like, he doesn't seem to know anything about anybody, and then because this was where I was sort of thinking about kind of with Born Identity as well, because it's like in a weird way, like what Matt Damon and Franco Potente have in that is not too dissimilar from this. That they're sort of thrown together. They kind of go on like a complicated journey. She is kind of following him around, but you get a much clearer sense of who Franco Potente's character is,
Hmm.
like so much more clearly than you do with what Rachel Bilson is given to do here.
Yeah,
So it's yeah, like yeah, and so that's the big weakness or one of the big weaknesses really, isn't it? So
yeah. She's
I mean, it
she's
worked out for them in real life for a while, but
yeah.
we can
She's
watch that,
essentially
but we don't care.
yeah. She's here to follow him around so she can be a damsel in distress. Like there's like that's
Yeah.
really it.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, like as a plot trope, like I don't hugely mind it, but it's yeah, it's not it has that part of this movie has not been well done, like not
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like you said, like as a trope, the damsel in distress, like it's a trope for a reason, but the damsel has to be a character and not just a prop. And a lot of these
yeah,
movies, she feels like a prop.
yeah. That is sadly true, isn't it? So, like when she's left alone in the basement of the Coliseum, like what does she do? Like he goes upstairs and has this giant life altering fight, and she's just kind of sitting around,
Yeah,
wandering around the basement of the Coliseum by herself, going, "I
yeah,
think he's forgotten about me." Like, oh
she's
crap,
yeah, she's just like banging on the door. What's going on in there? What's going on in there? Like,
Yeah,
like do something,
yeah,
get her in
yeah.
there.
Get a hobby, you know, call your mom and go, "Guess where
Yeah,
I am?"
right? Or
Or
like, yeah,
whatever, right?
like get her in there, get her into the because like by the time he even reveals his powers to her, I think there's like 20 minutes left.
Yeah,
And it's like,
it's
maybe do that earlier, maybe, get her involved.
I think, but I guess they didn't know how they wanted to play that, and I think it's fairly clear that they thought this was going to be like one of a trilogy or something. So they were
Yes.
very clearly kind of setting it up, and and so I think that yeah, they forgot that this shouldn't just be all set up. That there needed to be more, like yeah, she needed to have
Yeah.
more to do. She needed to have her own kind of stuff going on instead of just working in a sports bar and having a mom.
Yeah.
Like we don't really learn anything else about her, do we? And she wanted to go to Rome. Like
Yeah.
and those are her things.
Yeah.
So,
Uh
and the guy from Veronica Mars is mean to her. Those four things, you know.
is
So
there anything any other dislikes you want to get off your chest before we say a couple more nice things?
I think, so actually one thing I do want to say, is that they were the first movie to film in the Colosseum in something like 40, 50 years. And I don't know if they did as much with that as maybe they could have done in a weird way. like the splendor of that
Yeah, they
doesn't
they
really
they
come
are kind of
through,
just
right?
like in a basement of the Colosseum. It does seem like a waste.
I mean, part of it they were saying, and again, this is just from the commentary track, is that no one had ever been allowed in the basement before. So that was apparently why so much time is spent in the basement, is because they were the first production ever that was allowed to bring a camera down there. So I think they got very excited about that and forgot that it's for the rest of us who are not necessarily appreciating that, they are just standing in a basement.
Yeah,
It's that like the visual appeal of the basement is not quite as powerful as the visual appeal of, the rest of the Colosseum.
yeah.
And or just to even have you ever been to the Colosseum?
I have not.
I have been once, and I got literally shoved off my feet in the line going in by like some other tourists behind me who thought I was moving too slowly. Like I literally got like physically like knocked over. It is so crowded in there. It is so cramped, and the tourists from all the world are that feral. Like it is very hard to appreciate it when you're in there, kind of getting hit in the head, by people trying to get you out of the way. So the just the kind of the ability to sort of be in that space by yourself, I felt like they could have kind of like twirled the camera around a few more times. Like they really could have sort of appreciated that kind of luxury, before then they get into the fights. Because that is what is like so charming and romantic about it. Like he's
Hmm.
able to kind of, but even like the Adjustment Bureau, like they managed to get that sense of that through, with when Matt Damon is taking Emily Brunt around New York City, like that scene where like they walk into Yankee Stadium, like it's awesome. And that's just goddamn Yankee Stadium. Like,
Yeah,
why
and
couldn't they have managed the Coliseum,
and it's weird because this movie does have a lot of like really good like establishing shots of the locations they're jumping around to, and then they get to the Coliseum and you're just like basement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean some of it is obviously the restrictions of filming, but I think some of it is like maybe a lack of their appreciation of how like cool it is. It's like,
Hmm.
the shots they have like on the top of the Sphinx, which however they pulled that off, whether they helicoptered somebody on there or if they, just, did CGI or whatever, like those get like the grandeur of that across. But yeah, the ones in Rome don't, the ones in London don't. And then I guess the sort of like the random kind of desert scenes are cool, but it doesn't feel, like just all of that,
Yeah.
like there's no sense of like super of like place, just you're kind of swooping in and out of like the different kind of world weather environments. Not that
Hmm.
there's anything wrong with that, but yeah, I think yeah, you want like yes, like to appreciate that a lot more, I guess,
For sure.
than they kind of really achieved. Yeah.
I do have a couple more nice things to say about this film. Um,
Yeah.
and just a really small one. He doesn't have a big part, and I don't know. You're right. I don't know how he pulled Diane Lane, but I really like Michael Rooker in this. He's got it's look. I like Michael.
He
I
pulled
think.
Diane Lane because he promised her a bigger part in the sequel, and that's how they got Kristen Stewart too. And he said that in the commentary track.
Oh, you know
So
what?
you know,
You know what? Speaking of Kristen Stewart, actually, Nick did send me
right?
one thing he wanted me to relay about this movie, and I'm going to read it verbatim because he sent me
Sounds
his
good.
letterbox review and whatever. I said, "Is there any notes about the movie you want me to say?" And he just wrote something snarky about this being the soft launch for Twilight's Kristen Stewart. So everybody, that's what Nick has to say about this movie that he so desperately wanted on the wheel.
I mean, he's not wrong because I'd forgotten she was in this, and then she opens the door, and I was like, "Shit, it's
Yeah,
you know," and then she just kind of wanders away, and I think they were sort of planning on unpicking that in a second movie if
yeah.
maybe
The ending of
James was
this
going to be hunted
the
by
the
his
e-
sister, the paladin.
the ending of this is
Yeah,
very much come back for the sequel.
yeah,
Um,
and that's okay sometimes, but they would have to top the sort of like the location wise with the teleporting in a second
yeah,
one, and I'm not sure they have that in them. You know,
yeah. I mean, again, based on this script, I'm sure they were just gonna jump around and figure it out as they typed it.
yeah.
But yeah, I
I
do
mean,
really
it
like
seems
Michael
like
Rooker.
the James, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um.
Michael Rooker and Max Stereo is
Yeah.
so good. He is, kind of like wounded sort of longing in him that Hayden Christensen really does not bring
Hmm.
across. But
Yeah.
it makes you so sympathetic to him at the start. Like it kind of, I think that kind of powers the movie in a way that is surprising, and especially for a kid like that. So, but
Yeah,
have you been watching Burn Country, his TV show?
I have
Because I've
not.
seen a couple episodes. It is a dad TV show. That's it's
Ooh, I haven't heard of this
he
show.
so it's called Burn Country, and it's he Max Therio is like the lead guy who is a prison firefighter in California. So going out with the prison fire crews, except his parents are the civilians who are also working in the fire crews, and they hadn't known that he was in prison until they showed up on the
Ooh,
first day. So it's and so there's a lot of like talking about like duty and family and manliness, and then you fight a fire with all the CGI. And but the father in the show, the Max Steyer's father, is Billy Burke, as
oh,
in Charlie's, Charlie Swan from the Twilight movies. And it just I find myself watching it standing up sometimes. That's why I'm bringing this up, because it is a very dad TV show. Like,
yeah,
there are some women, but that's fine. This is a show for the dads. So
yeah. But yeah, Michael Rooker's good in this. That whole prologue is very good. Yeah, all those, all the teen actors. Like again, like a prologue like
yeah.
that really makes or breaks it. And if you have like a weak link in that young cast, you got to get on board with these characters immediately, and
Yeah, exactly.
they get you on board. And then Michael Rooker, he's got like two scenes or whatever, but he's got that one scene when Hayden like goes back in his room, and Michael Rooker like thinks David's come back, and
Yeah.
like that's a really
Yeah,
good
it's quite exciting.
scene there of just him thinking his son is returned home. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I think, I mean, it's not a, huge part, but he brings like, yeah, like you got that he loves his kid,
yeah,
even if he has not been the best dad, which is pretty clear. But you get that he's been trying.
yeah.
Maybe not super hard, but he has tried.
Yeah,
And
it's a really nice little moment in a movie that doesn't have a lot of little moments like that, because when things get going, it kind of shoots for the sky.
yeah. I mean, the final sort of the fight between kind of, David and Griffin is really strong as well,
Yes,
because that is, and how that is all sort of edited together, and this, as they're sort of, rolling around, punching each other kind of all around the world. Like it really, like the propulsion of that, I think really works. And I think 'cause I can't remember if I saw this in a cinema, but you can kind of see like an audience being just kind of like completely swept along with that
yeah,
in a way that the other rest of the movie maybe doesn't quite achieve. So
yeah, that is a very good. It's a good fight. There's a couple of good action sequences with the teleporting. The scene where they're driving through, I believe it's Tokyo. Like that's really
yeah,
fun.
he does that jump through
Yeah,
the plate glass over him,
yeah,
and
and he's
yeah,
jumping
that's
around through
awesome.
traffic. Like that's really fun,
Yeah,
I think. And again, in a month where the Electric State just came out, it's nice to like watch a movie where like you look and you can see all the money, where all the money went. Like you can see it on screen. You
yeah.
you can think that looks good. All these people are clearly in the same room on location. Nobody's just standing in front of a screen in somebody's backyard.
They apparently filmed that. They street shot that, like with like I think apparently Doug Lyman in a Steadicam, and just literally like, so they were saying like when they're crossing those big crossings in Tokyo, those aren't extras. They just literally basically bumped them out of a car, and like gorilla shot the scene, and then hid them
Yeah,
somewhere else. And apparently the driving sequences, they sent the stunt drivers out into traffic. Like that wasn't
that's great.
that they yeah, they didn't they couldn't close off the streets, so they just, and then they managed to kind of put it together in the editing.
You know,
And I was like, oh, that's bold. So,
it you
that's
know
sneaky.
it's a theme that's kind of that me and Nick have kind of like seen more and more as since we started this podcast, is just that like, and we don't necessarily like saying like, oh, movies used to be better than they were now, but like we have noticed this trend of like if you look at like older movies, like even the lesser ones were kind of doing things that like the big budget new movies don't do anymore.
Yeah,
And it's really like, we did an episode like weeks ago on the movie Man of the House, and like that's like a mid
I haven't
budget,
seen.
that's like a mid-budget, like whatever, like comedy from 2005, and even they had the
Yeah,
wherewithal to like legitimately like flip a bus over, and I'm just, So it's right, and
Yeah.
like we're like, it's just great to see. So like when you watch a movie like this, and like you kind of expect it to be, oh, it's 2008, not great, sci-fi action movie. You kind of expect, well, it'll probably look like something that Netflix just put out this year, and you're like, no, it looks better, and it's really nice to see. Like even with all the problems, you're like, yeah, they really were making a movie here.
Yeah, they really were in Tokyo. They really were in Egypt. They really were on a beach. And I think, that, things, it's not that they always look better in camera, but they look more human in camera.
Hmm.
And I think you can sense that. And, where the stunt work and the CGI, all that stuff kind of comes in, it should always be to sort of elevate sort of the thing that happens in camera. You
Yeah,
know, because you have a sense of danger when you really are falling through like but you really have the stunt guy falling through space or whatever, or you really have the surfer in trouble or something, in a way that when it's been faked, like, somehow, like, you don't get that sense necessarily, like the uncanny valley. I
yeah,
think there is something there, it kicks in. And it's not as fun. Like, it's kind of like the real thing. So, but it isn't the real thing. It's not as interesting as, dropping Jamie Bell, like, and Hayden Christensen in a crowded,
yeah.
Tokyo street, hope that they won't get recognized long enough to get their lines out, and have to contend with, the other people around them. Like, that makes it more interesting. It
Yeah.
feels more fresh, right?
And there's a real weight behind the teleporting in this. Like he teleports, and like you can see the effects of of some, there's cracks in the floor, and there's a
Yeah.
real weight behind it. It's not just like well, let's just green screen him out and back in somewhere. Like there's a weight there to it that makes it feel tangible.
Yeah, they talked about that a lot in the things, and they got in Wida from New Zealand to do the effects, and they said they wanted it to be very, like, important that this, that these actions had consequences, that there was kind of the wind ruffling, there was gonna, damage the floor, it is gonna crack the ceiling of the house, it is gonna, like, disrupt the radio signals. So I think there's a bit where, like, Michael Rooker's watching TV, and it shows, like, the New York TV logo, and they're in Michigan, and Doug Lyman talked about that a lot in the commentary, about how he wanted to make it obvious that if if this was happening, like you would know, like the glitch in the Matrix, like you would be able to tell.
Hmm. Yeah, just little details like that make it feel so much more
It
tangible
gives
and
it,
real. Like it gives it weight.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. Weight is exactly it. So
All right. Well, that's all
I
I have to
am duty
say.
bound. I am duty bound as a person who lives in London to point out, though, that in the United Kingdom and in Ireland and stuff, the word jumper means sweater.
Yes.
So there were a lot of jokes made on that front, which of course I can no longer recall when the movie came out, about how, this action movie, this science fiction movie, was just basically sweater. you know. So they probably could have come up with a more less silly title, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What is the book titled? Did they?
I think the book actually is titled Jumper.
Okay.
The other thing, I know I'm sort of repeating the commentary about, but Griffin isn't in the book.
Oh.
David Goyer, the screenwriter, made up Griffin completely. Apparently, in the book, there's a terrorism subplot. Some, yeah, and they decided they did not want to do that, and so the
Okay.
David Goyer, the screenwriter, came up with Griffin. So,
Good for him.
right, yeah, like,
Yeah.
he did a pretty
That's
cool thing there.
yeah.
So.
I'm sure. I'm sure there'll be some novel purists, but we don't need a terrorism subplot in this.
No, and Jamie Bell does tend to elevate
Yeah.
almost everything he's ever been in. So yeah, more Jamie Bell. So.
Do you have anything else to say, or can we go ahead and rate this bad boy?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, other than to again commend whoever chose to give that hair to Samuel L. Jackson.
I mean, look, it certainly makes it more memorable than it would have otherwise. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not gonna forget him in this movie.
absolutely not. So
Okay, I will start us off, and I'm gonna give this I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. I think it's not great, but there's something there.
It's
Like,
not yeah, it's not really bad.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not great, but it's I wouldn't maybe say it's good, but I would
yeah,
say it's not bad.
I
Yeah,
would,
two and a
yeah,
half stars.
it's not good, but like it's definitely watchable. Like there's worse
Yeah.
ways to spend an hour and a half. Like if
Oh, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it could have been better. Obviously, it could have been better, with another pass or two of the script. But like it's a decent 90 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, they began apparently working on sort of the logistics of the teleportation, and the script was very much the afterthought, which you can
Yeah.
totally tell. And but yeah, they could they Millie needed to either be bumped up or removed. Mary's character needed something to do other than the three little cameos she's got. Like
Hmm.
so, yeah, 2.5 stars though. The locations are good. Jamie Bella's good, and it's fun.
Yeah.
You know.
The real question, though, and the purpose of this podcast, is where it ranks on our dad movie meter out of 100%. How dad certified is this movie?
I
Now,
mean, it's not super high. I mean, is it?
well, here's my thinking, and
Go
we
on.
we always do this. We think how many elements of this movie would appeal to dads? I do think dads like a
Traveling
man
light.
on. I think dads like a man on the run story.
Yes.
Dads
Traveling
like
light.
Yeah. Dads like traveling light. They'll appreciate. I think dads will really appreciate that the first thing he did was rob a bank.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dads
Times,
love Samuel L. Jackson.
that's true.
I think.
Um,
I think. I think dads will enjoy the buddy cop aspects when Jamie Bell is there. I think what will sink this for dads is a lot of the sci-fi gobbledygook that it tries to get into with like the ancient paladins and whatever. I think they won't care about Rachel Bilson.
no, they won't care about Rachel Bilson. They might care more about the gobbledygook because, we all quite enjoy, don't we, sort of arguing about whether or not something like this could be feasible.
I think they'll
Kind of like
I think they'll enjoy the teleportation gobbledygook. I don't think they'll care for the paladins gobbledygook.
that's fair. That's very fair.
I think that'll be a
With women.
situation where they're like, who are these people? Why are they after them? Why do I care anymore?
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, fair enough. He
Um,
could have robbed a second bank at some point in the movie as well. So maybe there weren't enough
yeah.
bank robbers in this. So
I mean, I think they do say that he's robbed a couple banks, but they only show the one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, he could have robbed. He could have robbed two.
yeah, I
Even Bonnie and Clyde robbed two.
yeah. I think I don't know. I'm gonna say this is maybe I don't want to say it's not a dad movie. I don't want to say it is either. I think this is probably leaning towards a 50% dad certified because I think there's enough here that that they might kind of get interested in, but then they'll be like, but why do I care? And then they'll fall
I
asleep.
mean, it's skewed. Not very young, but like everybody, like the main characters are all in sort of their very early 20s.
Yeah.
So it might skew a little too young in that sense to be a dad movie. 'Cause these kids, if any of those three main characters were parents, I mean, heaven help us all, right? So, and I don't think there's anything in this movie that really makes you relate to the dad character in it. So I might go down to 47%
47%?
for
Okay.
dads.
Well, usually when we have
Yeah,
a difference, we always meet in the middle. So let's call this a 48.5%
that's fine.
dad certified movie. So not really dads.
I can live with that math.
Yeah. So this is 48.5 on the dad scale. It is not dad certified. Sorry, Hayden.
Sorry, Rachel. Sorry, Doug. So, but hello to Steve Buscemi if he is listening to this. So.
Steve, it's his favorite podcast.
We love your work.
Yes. Okay, before we get into the next segment, you mentioned this to me in our chats. You have a Hayden Christensen story.
Well, I saw him in the West End, and then I had to look up when that was, and that was in 2002, which
Ooh.
I, was going bloody hell. That's a long time ago. But yeah, there was a play by oh God, now I've forgotten who it is. But the play is called This Is Our Youth, and it's basically two young men and a young woman in a sort of 80s kind of dorm room kind of just arguing about stuff. And I saw Hayden Christensen, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Anna Paquin
Ooh.
on the West End in 2002. And he was playing, I think, a very sort of similar character to Anakin in the Star Wars movies. And there was a whole kind of crowd of people that had kind of come out for to kind of see kind of like the new sort of hot young thing. And he didn't hit any new notes at all. But and Anna Paquin, I think everybody had heard of, and she did a really good job, having won the Oscar so young, so that was quite exciting. But Jake Gyllenhaal was the one that actually surprised everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean everyone, not just me myself sitting there.
Mhm.
But it was it's sort of seeing how he kind of I mean, his character is probably like the most designed to be the most appealing, but he, like he wasn't playing Donnie Darko. Like he was giving something new on the stage, which Hayden unfortunately didn't. And I think that's probably maybe why his career has not gone as well as maybe anybody wanted it to, because he was so good in the one sort of iconic character. But he hasn't somehow been able to find kind of like the other notes that you need to be able to play to have that kind of lengthier career.
Mhm.
I mean, you don't always need to,
Yeah,
but
I think of
you need a little more.
I think of someone like Keanu, and
Oh yeah.
he's kind of the same in that like he kind of has that one thing, but he's so good at it that
He started out
it
in Bill and
translates.
Ted. Like,
Yeah, like he's so good at his like one or two things, but like it can like he translates it to so many different like avenues.
yeah.
Like Neo and Johnny Utah aren't really that dissimilar in performance, but they're so dissimilar in character, but it works either way. And I guess Hayden just hasn't figured out how to channel Anakin into other people.
And I mean, but I think he hasn't made as many interesting choices, because Keanu Reeves was in Dangerous Liaisons, which was a huge issue in the 80s because he isn't white. So that was considered very kind of risque casting, except certainly all the girls at my high school stampeded to go and see Dangerous Liaisons for Keanu. And nowadays, of course, that issue wouldn't, isn't something considered at all, and thank God for that. Like, it's been terrible, but you haven't seen Hayden trying kind of
Yeah,
things that would stretch him in that way. Like, he
he's
isn't
yeah
showing up
he's
into
never
Shakespeare
had
adaptations,
he's never had like a River's Edge or
or
my
even a John Wick. Like,
yeah
let's face it,
he's never had a My Private Idaho.
My Own Private Idaho, yes,
Yeah,
that's true. That was another movie that was considered like anti-stardom, to do the big gay movie in the 80s. And it was, but it's the kind of statement of intent, like, I am here to be interesting. I am here
yeah,
to act. I'm not just here to, post on my, good looks and my, charisma or whatever. And yeah, and for some, and Keanu did that, and Hayden didn't, or hasn't so far. He could come back. You never know.
he
There
could
could be
come
the
back.
Sans. I'm sure there's a better way to pronounce that than what I just
Hay-
did there.
Hayden Hay- Hay- Hayden
Hayden the
Sans.
Sans?
Hayden Sans?
Yeah. That sounds
Christiana
like a
Sans?
sauce to put on your fish. I don't know if that works.
Uh, well, we're gonna move on here to this is mine and Nick's favorite segment of the show. We are gonna name our negative Nancy's of the week. This is where we mine the IMDb goofs section,
Mm.
where people who me and Nick feel like they don't watch movies properly, and they go on IMDb and they log these really pedantic complaints, and we single them out and rage at them.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Go
as you
on.
do. I have mine here, and this person says, when Griffin is playing video games in his lair, he is clearly using an Xbox controller, and the game he plays appears to be Halo, an Xbox exclusive game. Later, when he's looking through his game collection, the games are clearly PlayStation 2 titles.
I think a virgin posted that.
Listen,
I think we can
buddy.
safely say.
Have you ever considered that the man who can teleport wherever he wants has more than one video game console?
Nope. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, like, God. I say this every time we do this segment, but If this is what you're thinking about when you're watching a movie, maybe movies aren't for you.
I know, right? I know. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the one where they're complaining about it being in the big sort of final fight sequence at the end that it's daytime all around the world, no matter where they're jumping in their fights. Which is like, yes, so we can see them fighting.
Yeah.
If
Right.
we, have to stop to kind of, wonder if they've been plummeted into darkness or not, that kind of loses the whole thing.
Yeah. People are always complaining. Oh, the finale takes place in the dark to hide the CGI. I can't see anything. Well, now you can see things. Oh, but it shouldn't be daytime.
Exactly. Like, you can get one or you can get the other. You maybe can't get both. So I did wonder in watching the movie
Yeah.
how Millie was able to have her passport to get on that plane to Rome. That would be, if I was going to be one of these negative Nancys, that would be the thing I would be putting in. To establish someone who's never traveled and never gone anywhere, has her passport instantly to hand to go and get on and to go immediately go to Rome. That did I did stop to wonder about that. I'm sorry. I'm an embarrassment. You should make fun of me now.
Well, look. Speaking of Millie, I have Nick's here that he sent to me. And this one I'm so glad has 0 upvotes.
Okay.
When Millie helps David with the cut on his face, the two each drink a beer. Millie is on a shift as a bartender. While it is not illegal for bartenders to drink, most employers in the United States would immediately fire a bartender for drinking on the job. Yes, because that'd make for an interesting movie. Hey, what are you doing? You're fired.
Like that was written by someone who got fired from a bartending job for, having a beer on shift.
That was either written,
so therefore,
or it was written by someone who
enjoy a movie again.
Or it was written by someone who owns a bar.
You think you're gonna get away with that behavior in here, Missy? Let me alert IMDb.
She'd never do that on my watch.
Absolutely not. Yeah, no charming teleporters in my bar. Get out of my pub. The usual.
Well, now that that's out of the way, the fun part of the show begins. That's right. If you thought the rest of the show was fun, it's time for dad jokes.
Ah!
That's right. Every week we share a dad joke that we come up with related to the movie. As the guest, you are permitted to be able to say you couldn't come up with one. We understand. Sometimes we can't come up with one.
I do have a dad joke that's related to this movie.
Ooh, excellent. Would you like to go first or last?
Oh, it's up to you. I'm the guest. I mean, I don't mind. My joke is great. So.
Oh, okay. If your joke is great, we'll save the best for last. Then I'm going to start with Nick's joke that he sent to me, and okay. I'm starting with his because, and I'm sure he didn't plan this, but his dad joke is actually quite similar to one of our dad approved letterbox reviews because his dad joke is, "I wanted to jump into another movie."
That's not actually a joke. It's just a statement. That's yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, you're not gonna like my joke either. My joke for this movie is
okay.
No, I'm just gonna explain this joke for the listeners. This joke requires a little bit of knowledge of the career of Samuel L. Jackson. But this movie made me want to jump out of a window.
See, that is actually a joke. That is actually sort of funny. Like that one's okay. So
okay, but we're saving the best for last. So what do you got?
Wow. So this is more on the theme of the movie and not a pun on the word jumper. But
okay.
What do you call a beehive with no exits?
What?
Unbelievable. Get it? Get it? Because you can't leave it because it's got no exits and you're a bee.
That's a good joke. That is a good joke.
And it's preposterous. So anyway, that's my joke.
Okay. Well, that was a very good joke.
I'm sorry.
You've set yourself up well for this next part because, as always, whenever we have a guest, I give them the dad questionnaire.
Oh, okay, go on.
I'm going to give you 14 questions.
Okay.
You're going to answer.
I'm ready.
Right from the heart. And based on your answers, the listeners will be able to tell how much dad energy you exude.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
Yes. Question 1. Do you think you could land a plane in an emergency?
Absolutely not. Well, no, I take that back. I could land it, but I don't think I could land it well. I could get it onto the ground, probably in a crash-like style. I don't think I would fly the plane forever. Landing it successfully, No.
What is your favorite action movie?
Oh my god. The Raid.
Ooh. All right. What is your remote drop movie? This is the
Oh, I
movie that
don't
when you
understand what that means.
this is the movie that when you see it on TV, you drop the remote and watch.
Oh. Last of the Mohicans. But also Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Those two.
Ooh, that was the second movie we ever did on this show.
Such a good movie. So.
Question 4. How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Never. Except when I'm watching a movie that's, got its sequences in the Colosseum. So or Gladiator. Or Gladiator 2. So,
All right. Question 5. Have you ever watched a movie standing up? And if so, what's the longest you've lasted before sitting?
I mean, yes. And I tend to sit when I watch movies. I tend to go, I'm locked into this, and then I sit down. I do not stand and watch as much as, perhaps I might.
If you were
That's
stranded
not very dad energy. I'm so sorry.
if you were stranded on a deserted island, what movie would you want with you?
Oh, I mean, obviously Castaway. You need tips for how you're gonna get off. So
Yeah, for the educational purposes.
yeah, exactly. Like in Shawshank when they talk about, Count of Monte Cristo, putting that in the educational section for the prison escape. So
Question 7. How many works of Taylor Sheridan have you seen?
off the top of my head, but I must have seen something. What's he done? Can I look him up very quickly?
He's the Yellowstone guy. He's done
Oh, that guy.
all the spin-offs of Yellowstone, all those Paramount shows. He wrote the movie Sicario, Hell or High Water, Wind River.
I've seen Wind River. That was an intense movie. I've seen Sicario and I didn't like that at all. I've seen a couple episodes of Yellowstone and I have been saving Hell or High Water on my TiVo for a while until, because that cast is to die for. So, like not much.
Okay. But at least one, but you have seen at least one.
I have. Wind River is not, it's a good movie, but it isn't fun. And Sicario is just so bleak. Like, it's very hard to sit through, I think, because it's just so grim. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Question 8. If a loved one was kidnapped, which movie character would you most emulate while attempting a dare and rescue?
That's a really good question. Who would I emulate? Didn't they do this recently, but it was a woman who had to go and get a kidnapped kid back? And it was Sarah Bulger, wasn't it? Who had to go and find her kidnapped child. And I thought that was an interesting twist. So I would emulate her.
I don't know this movie. I'll have to look this up.
I can't even remember what it's called. Oh my god. Otherwise I would obviously emulate the guy in the Raid. Because, he can sort out anything. So
All right. Question 9. Do you let others touch the thermostat?
No, obviously not. What's the matter with you?
Your dad energy just shot up. Question 10. Who is the best Jack? Bauer, Reacher, or Ryan?
Oh, Jack Ryan, for sure. So, Patriot Games with Harrison Ford was filmed in the town where I was living at the time, and we were all beside ourselves with hysteria. And it was one of the few times my parents let me sort of cut school was they did a special like preview of it on the Naval Academy where my mother was working. So I got to go and see it with the Brigade of Midshipmen, and it was pretty great. So, and Samuel L. Jackson is in Patriot Games. It's one of his very early movies.
He is.
Yeah. And there's a scene, in his office where he has the same sofa as my parents used to. That was always weird, So some accuracy in set design there.
Question 11. What is your favorite movie quote?
Oh my goodness! Now, of course, all movie quotes have flown straight out of my head in the way that it kind of implies I've never actually seen anything. So, have you ever seen The Assassination Bureau with Oliver Reed and Diana Rigg?
I have not.
It's terrible, except Diana Rigg is extremely beautiful.
Of course.
The bad guy is Telly Savalas in a series of extremely stupid hats. And Oliver Reed is just playing like the most charming man. And at one point they're kind of falling in love with each other, him and Diana Rigg, and are trying to fight it. And he just looks at her and he just goes, "Surrender." And that's pretty effective. Like that is just like a one line delivery that I think about all the time. So it's not really a quote, but just the vibe of Oliver Reed trying to seduce you, like it worked.
I'll
So
take it. Question 12. Who is the coolest movie character?
Maggie Chung in Irma Vep.
Question 13.
She
Favorite dad joke.
go. I mean, I think I've told my favorite dad joke.
It's a good one.
I mean, if everybody wants to hear that, they can just rewind this, a few minutes and it'll be there. So,
All right. Question 14. This is the final and most important question.
Okay.
What is the best Tom Cruise movie?
I am going to say Legend.
Ooh.
I watched that movie about 100,000 times when I was very small. And the sequence where Tim Curry is dressed up like Satan and has Mia Sara in sort of a very similar to kind of the kind of Carrie Fisher sort of gold bikini outfit, except it's way weirder than that, is something, that's kind of formulative, very early on. And it's Tom Cruise being weird, which he does not do nearly enough. And he's done Born on 4th of July, he's done Magnolia, he's done American Made, but most of the time he doesn't really sort of, this was before his persona had been formed, so he was more willing to play. And yeah, I think that's the one. I haven't seen it in a while, but that's the one I would probably revisit more happily than the more usual suspects, I think.
That is an out there pick. I respect that. I respect that.
I mean, I saw it so many times as a small child. Like and it was because of Tom Cruise being in it. And it's so weird. Like, it was Ridley Scott, right? Like this was,
Yes. Yeah. I think
like,
that was like the movie he did after Alien.
yeah, probably, and then, yeah, there's like a lot of gauzy sort of, and there's like a unicorn running around, and then Tom
Yeah.
Cruise dressed in like the tunic, and then the girl from Ferris Bueller's Day Off in distress, and then Tim Curry getting to absolutely one up his role from Rocky Horror in a way that nobody really remembers, which is unfair. Yeah.
Do you watch the do you watch the theatrical cut or the director's cut? Because I remember I went on a one year for a different podcast I used to host. We watched every Tom Cruise movie to rank them, and I didn't like it. And then a couple years ago, after I played the latest Legend of Zelda game, I went on a fantasy film kick, and I watched the director's cut of Legend, and I liked it a whole lot better.
I was probably seeing this movie as a small child, so I was less of a sophisticated film critic then than obviously I presently am. So I very much doubt it was the director's cut. We probably rented it on the Max. Like, this is how far, like, I haven't seen it in a while, but it's yeah, like it's in there. It got in there, and yeah. So
All right, well that's it for the dad questionnaire. So Sarah, our listeners now can judge just how dad you are. It's not for me to say, it's for them. They will hold their judgments to themselves.
I look forward to the dad themed judgment. It'll just be like, all the dates I go on, really. So probably
All right.
end as successfully too. So
All right. Well, this is so weird to do without Nick here, but I'm gonna spin our movie wheel.
Spin that wheel
To pick
okay.
the movie that we do for the next episode. We have 7. We have 7 movies left on this list. I'm gonna list them out. Nick usually says what movie he'd like to land it on. You're the guest. He's not here. The tariffs made him too expensive. So I'm gonna list out these movies, and you're gonna tell me what movie you would like us to watch next.
Okay.
We have the Nicolas Cage movie Snake Eyes, not the G.I. Joe Snake Eyes.
That's too bad. That's not the movie, the G.I. Joe one.
We have a Prey and Predator double feature. We have The Nice Guys. We have GoldenEye. We have Wedding Crashers. We have Punch Drunk Love, and we have The Equalizer.
The Denzel Equalizer, presumably.
Yes.
Okay. I think you should go with Punch Drunk Love. I like that
Love is
movie,
a good one.
and I don't think it has been revisited enough lately. I think the dads could stand to hear more about Punch Drunk Love.
That is a great movie.
So,
Look, for my money, that has maybe the best phone call in film history.
it's as long as it's not, John Favreau leaving the voicemail in Swingers, that is the best voicemail in film history.
That's the best. That's the best
That was
voicemail.
also That's a Doug Liman film there as
Yes.
well, come to think.
That's the best
So-
voicemail. Punch Drunk Love is the best phone call, for my
Mhm.
money. Just two men telling each other to shut up. I'm gonna spin
Emily
this.
Watson was first. I used to pass her in my commute sometimes, and she would just be
Ooh.
like walking through the train station, and just she was so beautiful, like oh, and she would just kind of glide past me with me sort of standing there, going, "Holy God!" Like it's 7:30. I'm at a commuter train station in central London, and she's just kind of walking around like a normal human person.
I hear that a lot from British celebrities, that they can just walk around normally in London, nobody cares.
I mean, yeah, like 'cause, like they just kind of walk past you, and you're sort of there going, "Oh, that's Josh Hartnett. Okay, like I guess he's also here in I don't know what he's doing in this part of town this time of day, but like, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm not gonna tackle him to the ground and say I think he's great. He can just feel that psychically as he goes to his next appointment. So, yeah, like it's I mean, I guess it's because everybody just sort of has to kind of bump along in here depending on where you are. Like I had an office in central London once where we did have like a celebrity spot on the wall. And you walk out and get our lunch and come back in and just write it up on the wall who we bumped into today. And I think whoever saw Britney Spears on their lunch break, they won for a while. That was annoying. But, yeah.
All right, I'm going to spin this wheel as always. This is not hooked up to any audio, so I will be doing the sound effect for our listeners.
Okay. Very dramatic.
It is the Equalizer,
Way.
which is right next to Punch Drunk Love on the wheel, but the wheel decided to keep going.
The wheel has spoken.
All hail the wheel.
Mean, Denzel is never bad. Have you seen Gladiator 2?
I
that
have.
cape that he was wearing?
Oh,
Magnificent.
magnificent.
Right?
All his
But
outfits.
he needs to wear a cape and walk through more movies, just like being disapproving in the back,
Just have him walk through
Yeah.
just have him walk through random movies in a cape, just looking angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody
And-
wants to do that on YouTube, like Paddington in every movie,
Yes.
you know.
Just add in
Denzel.
Denzel from Gladiator 2 into every movie. All right.
Work.
Well, that is it for the show. Sarah, where can people follow you?
I am on Blue Sky as Cardial, which is the Irish word for friendly. And I'm under Instagram under that as well. CAIRDUIL. Or just my full name,
All
to
right.
find me in the socials. So
As always, you can follow the podcast at Stand and Watch on Blue Sky. You can follow me and Nick, but you'll have to work for that information. It's out there. If you follow the show, you can find us easily, but just do a little digging. But this has been fun.
be cool,
Yeah. This has been fun. Maybe I don't even need Nick.
I'd be very happy to come back anytime.
Yeah.
I can, you were
Yeah.
worried we weren't gonna have enough to talk about, and it's like, yeah, well, we
It was-
we managed.
Yeah, it was quite stress. I probably put you through a roller coaster of stress with like a last minute we might have to cancel.
It's all right,
And then being like, actually, never mind. We'll just do it without him.
I mean, life finds a way. There you go. There's my favorite movie quote from
Ooh,
Jurassic Park.
There you go. Okay, everybody, you got to reevaluate. You got to reevaluate the dad rating for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please and thank you. So,
All right. Well, great episode. Nick,
bye, Steve. You see me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick usually helps him with this, but okay, great episode. Goodbye, all you standees, and Steve Buscemi. And as always, whatever you do, don't tell your mother.